At night, Charles Benoit is the author of 3 rollicking international adventure novels, including his Edgar-nominated debut, Relative Danger, and Noble Lies, his Thailand-based detective noir. They are, according to the Denver Post, the kinds of books, and I have to, every time, I love this quote, so I have to use it.
It's going to go on my tombstone.
The kinds of books Alfred Hitchcock would have filmed. He is also the author of You, the critically acclaimed novel that put him at the forefront of what is now being called YA noir. During the day, he works at the #1 small business in America, where he does more writing as well as video production. Right. Please welcome Charles Benoit.
Thank you. Thank
you. Now, Alfred Hitchcock never did a young adult film.
That's because he died young.
Nor a heist film. But your novel that came out last year was a young adult noir.
Right.
It's in the second person, which means first person is I did this, second person is you did this, third person is they did this,
right.
Or he did
or
this.
She.
Now, I heard that you did this on a dare, which I thought was interesting enough, but sort of quirky, until I heard that you became a vegetarian for 7 years to win a bet.
Yeah, that's...
Well, let's start with the book first.
Okay, all right.
How did this come about?
Well, I had just finished writing Noble Lies, and that's the mystery you said that's set in Thailand. And a lot of people said, well, where's your next adventure going to be? What part of the world are you going to go to next? And I thought, well, geez, I've written 3 around-the-world adventure novels. I mean, one of the reviews out of the Denver Post or something said, you know, Benoit's at the top of his game. And it's like, is this my game? Is this it? I can only write around-the-world adventure novels. I'm a writer. I want to try different things. And of course, in the mystery world, it seems like you have to get yourself pigeonholed real quick, and then you stay there, and you're very proud of it. I was getting antsy for that. So I was explaining to my wife, Rose, that, you know, I really want to do something different. I want to just break out and try something just to see how I can challenge myself as a writer. And she said, well, you know, she's a 9th grade English teacher. I'm a former high school teacher. And she said, you should try writing a young adult. You have an easygoing style. You don't try to impress people with gigantic vocabularies. You keep pace moving. You understand what young adults are looking for. You should write a book for that. And I had never read a young adult novel. I had been assigned a lot of them. But I had read a lot of back covers of young adult novels. But as far as actually sitting down and reading cover to cover a young adult novel, it hadn't happened. So I didn't feel... I was very ignorant of what they were supposed to be. So the first thing you should do then, of course, is get a list of like the top 20 young adult novels, read them, understand the genre, understand... Oh, no, that's too much work. I just decided, all right, I'm going to write one. I told Rose, okay, I'm going to write one. I said, but it sounded too easy, writing a young adult book. And I didn't think it was going to get it published. I'm not a young adult writer. So I said, all right, I'm going to make it harder for myself. I'm going to, again, ignorant of what goes on in young adult novels, I said, all right, I can't have any swearing and I can't have any sex. Like I said, I was ignorant of what's going on in young adult novels. So that was my first challenge. And I said, no, you know what, Rose? I'm going to make it even harder for myself. I'm going to write this in second person, just to do it. I remember being once at a mystery authors convention, and we were all sitting down at the bar, and there were several of us, and I can't remember who was at the table, surprise. But we were going around in a drunken state trying to outdo each other on what would be the hardest novel to tell your publisher, or tell your agent you've written. And so people were going around saying, it would be, okay, stay with me on this. It would be a cowboy coming-of-age science fiction story with vampire cats. It's like, oh, that's good, that's good. And somebody else goes through and says, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. It's going to be a family psychodrama of an imaginary family that takes place in Paris, and it's actually their dirt. Okay, that doesn't make sense, but that's good. And then the next person around said, no, it would be young adult noir told in second person. And I just remember thinking, that sounds good. I'd like to try that. And so, of course, remember, we were all drinking at the time, and at the time it sounded like a perfectly legitimate and easy plot line. So when Rose suggested I try a young adult, I said, all right, I'm going to do that. young adult noir told in second person, no swearing, no sex. I can do this.
Would you want to give a little bit of a synopsis of the book?
Boy, it's kind of hard. I think it's a story about choices, and the choices that we make and the choices we don't make. It's a young adult guy. His name's Kyle Chase. He's an average guy. There's nothing overly spectacular about him. He's, through some failure to make some choices and some bad choices, he's ended up at a less than prestigious high school. And all of his friends went on to the smart high school. He kind of ended up stuck here. He's in 10th grade. His life's just going by, and he's really not really taking control of any choices. He has plans, but that would mean acting on them, and he really doesn't seem to be the kind of person that can get motivated to act. And as I said, he's just kind of floating through until a new kid arrives in the school, Zach McDade. And Zach is the guy I always wanted to be when I was in high school. Zach is hip, he's cool, he's sharp, he's a good dresser, he has no problem with the ladies, the adults he uses as he wants to. He's also evil. That wasn't what I was going to be in high school, but I mean everything else about him. And he presents some opportunities for Zach, for Kyle to, as he later says in the book, I just give you opportunities. I give people choices, and whether they act on them or not is up to them. And through a series of choices and non-choices, Kyle watches his whole life spin out of control. And Elmore Leonard is the one who said noir. Noir is man meets woman, man flushes life down toilet. I think this book is Kyle meets Zach, Kyle flushes life down urinal, because that makes sense. So it's a dark book that just gets dark, and I love the reaction I get from people at the ending. I get these emails all the time from young adult readers all across the country who write and say, I want to write to you about the ending. I got to the ending of your book and I read the ending. I hated it. I hated the ending. When are you going to write another? So the ending does leave a lot of things up in the air.
It's interesting that you brought up strictures or limitations you wanted to put on your writing. First of all, it recalls something Shannon was talking about when he was here, as far as putting limitations on art in order to make that art better. But it's also the subject of a couple questions I have. For instance, when you set about to write a noir, which means you already had an idea of what noir was in your head, so you had an idea of what you needed to put into that novel to make it a noir. What were those things?
Well, I knew in the end, I wanted it to be a kind of like a desperate ending of like, it can't end this way. You can't, things can't end on this sour note. There's got to be some light. There's got to be some joy, some redemption. And I wanted to cut, the young adults who write to me all the time says, what happens next? What do you think happens next? Well, tell me it all turns out okay. And I knew I wanted to cut it off before any chance of redemption, any chance of something good coming from this. So I knew I wanted the kind of novel that left people with that feeling in their stomach of, oh man, well that stinks. So I knew I kind of wanted that. I also knew that I didn't want adults coming in to save the day. I knew I didn't want the concerned coach to come in and say, well, lad, you've taken some bad paths, but let's get you on the right side. Oh gosh, coach, you're right. I didn't want that. I didn't want anybody swooping in. Not that there wouldn't have been adults out there who cared for this person, but I wanted this person not to see them. They existed. I'm sure they were there. If you read through it, you can see there's conversations with people who are actually trying to get him, but he doesn't see them, so he has to be oblivious to that. So I knew I didn't want anybody rescuing him for that option. And I also knew, because it was going to be a young adult noir, I knew I should have had a femme fatale, but other than the fact that most teenage guys will do anything a teenage girl tells them to do, so that kind of, it doesn't take a lot of prodding to imagine, that they would do that. I didn't feel like I wanted to write that kind of book where it was going to be this girl using her ways to get this guy, because I think that probably goes on enough in real life. I wanted it to be the kind of character that would come in that it would be easy for our protagonist at the beginning to dismiss as just a freaky, weird guy who in the end just pulls him deeper and deeper down. So I just knew I wanted this downward spiral and also a puppet master who's controlling this whole thing and deliberately setting into motion a series of impossibly bad events and just let it go crazy that way.